Somebody's baby is under the ground. The thought slammed into Lila Mensa's mind before she even understood what her ears were telling her. The metal watering can clattered against the stone pathway of the King estate, water pooling across perfectly manicured tiles as she dropped to her knees. Her hands plunged into the soil beneath the rose garden, soft, too soft, disturbed, and her fingers brushed something that made her blood freeze. Flannel, warm skin, a tiny arm. Oh God, no. Noah. She clawed at the earth with desperate, trembling hands, pulling away fistfuls of dirt until she saw it. The small blue pajama top, a plastic bag half torn near his face. She hooked both arms under the child's body and yanked him upward with a force born of pure terror. His chest convulsed. He gasped, then screamed. It hurts. I'm sorry, baby. I'm sorry, Lila sobbed, holding him against her chest as dirt spilled down both their bodies. Breathe, Noah. Please, Jesus, keep him breathing. His tiny fingers dug into her collar as he coughed, a horrible, rattling sound from a throat full of soil. Help, she screamed toward the mansion. Somebody help me. A door slammed. Heavy footsteps thundered across the terrace. Adrian King, billionaire heir, Chicago's golden son, came charging toward them, his face twisted into something Lila had never seen before. Not the polished executive, not the composed father. Raw, blinding rage. What have you done? He roared. Lila tried to speak, her voice shaking. Mr. King, I found him buried. I heard him crying. You monster. He lunged forward and ripped Noah out of her arms. The boy wailed at the sudden movement. Lila reached out, panic flooding every nerve. Sir, please, I pulled him out because. Don't you dare touch him. His hand struck her cheek so hard her head snapped sideways. Pain exploded across her jaw before she could react. She stumbled backward, the world tilting. You buried my son alive, Adrian hissed, cradling Noah against his chest. You tried to kill him. No, Mr. King, I would never. But before she could finish, another voice floated across the terrace. Smooth, perfect, devastated. Adrian. Vanessa Price appeared in the doorway like something out of a magazine, silk robe draped perfectly over her frame, dark hair cascading over one shoulder, tears glistening in her wide, horrified eyes. She rushed to Adrian's side, placing a trembling hand on his shoulder. Oh my God, Lila, how could you? Her voice cracked with just the right amount of disbelief. Noah's just a child. I didn't do this, Lila whispered, desperate now. I heard him cry. I dug him up. I saved him. Vanessa gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. You expect us to believe that? You were alone with him. You've been acting strange for weeks. That's right. One of the housemaids shouted from the doorway. I heard her talking to herself this morning. Another voice chimed in. She's been too attached to that boy, always watching him. I knew something was off. Lila's heart dropped into her stomach. That's not true, she said, her voice breaking. You'll know me. I would never hurt. Monster, someone yelled. Child killer, another shouted. Adrian turned, his eyes blazing with a fury that made Lila's knees buckle. If my son dies, he growled, stepping toward her, I swear on everything I own, your life won't be worth the dirt you dug up. Before we continue, welcome back our amazing viewers. And if you're new here, thank you for joining us. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss our daily dose of deeply moving, heartfelt stories. Also, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We enjoy reading every single one. Now let's dive into today's story. Lila stumbled backward, pain radiating through her arms from where the thorns had torn her skin. She forced herself upright, legs shaking beneath her. Mr. King, I'm begging you, she cried, voice trembling. Just listen to me. He was buried when I found him. I swear to God. Don't bring God into this, Adrian snapped. You're fired, and you're not setting foot inside this house again. The words hit like a physical blow. No, sir, please. She stumbled forward, dropping to her knees in the dirt. I didn't hurt him. I saved him. I swear on my life. Her voice cracked under the weight of desperation. My daughter needs me. I'm behind on every bill. I've been working double shifts. Please don't do this. I'm all she has. Vanessa stepped forward, her shadow falling over Lila like an eclipse. She crouched slightly, eyes gleaming. "Adrian, don't listen," she whispered loud enough for Lila to hear. "She's manipulating you. Can't you see? Women like her know how to beg. It's what they do best." Something inside Lila withered at those words. Adrian exhaled hard. "Get off my property, Lila. Now." She forced herself to her feet, legs trembling. She pressed a hand to the cuts on her arm, feeling them sting. She wanted to scream the truth, wanted to shake them and make them hear, but her voice wouldn't come. As she turned to leave, her eyes caught Noah's. The boy stared at her over his father's shoulder, pale and shaking, lips barely moving. But she heard it. Faint, broken, terrified. "She told me not to scream." Lila's breath caught. Their eyes locked for one impossible second before Adrian carried him inside, and the heavy doors of the King estate slammed shut. She stood alone on the driveway, dirt under her nails, blood on her arms, and the weight of a lie that was already spreading through Chicago's wealthiest corridors like wildfire. Upstairs, behind a softly closed window, Vanessa stood watching. A faint smile curved her lips as she sipped her coffee. The game had only just begun. The night pressed heavy against the windows of Lila's tiny South Side apartment. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her scraped palms, dirt still wedged beneath her nails no matter how hard she'd scrubbed. The silence felt suffocating, broken only by the hum of the old refrigerator and the distant wail of sirens outside. Her daughter Amara slept in the next room, unaware that their world had just collapsed. Lila replayed the morning over and over, the cry rising from the earth, Noah's small body convulsing as she pulled him free, Adrian's hand across her face, Vanessa's perfect tears. But most of all, she heard Noah's broken whisper, faint as a ghost. "She told me not to scream." The words circled her mind like vultures, refusing to let her rest. A 5-year-old doesn't speak like that unless someone taught him fear, unless someone threatened him, unless someone buried him and wanted him silent. She stood, pacing the narrow space between her bed and the cracked dresser. Every instinct screamed at her to let it go, to disappear, to survive. She'd been fired, humiliated, accused of the unthinkable. The police had questioned her for hours, their eyes cold and skeptical, before releasing her with a warning to stay away from the King estate. But something deeper than survival pulsed through her veins now, something that wouldn't let her walk away. Because if she didn't fight for the truth, who would? Certainly not Adrian, blinded by grief and rage. Certainly not the staff who had turned on her in seconds. And definitely not Vanessa, who stood there in silk and lies, spinning a story the world was all too eager to believe. By dawn, Lila made her decision. She would go back, not to confront, not to beg, but to search. To see what everyone else refused to look at. She waited until mid-morning when she knew Vanessa would be gone. The woman kept a predictable schedule, always leaving the estate by 10 for her charity luncheons and spa appointments. Lila parked her old sedan 3 blocks away and walked the rest of the distance, heart hammering with every step. The estate loomed ahead, its stone facade gleaming in the sunlight, beautiful and cold. She slipped around to the service entrance, using the spare key she'd forgotten to return when Adrian had thrown her out. The kitchen was empty. The house felt tense, hushed, as if even the walls were holding their breath. Lila moved quickly through the hallways, her footsteps soft on the polished floors. She headed straight for the rose garden, the place where everything had shattered. In daylight, the flower bed looked almost peaceful. Fresh mulch had been spread over the disturbed soil, an attempt to erase what had happened. But Lila knew better than to trust appearances. She knelt where she had found Noah, running her fingers through the earth. At first, nothing. Just dirt and roots and the faint scent of fertilizer. Then her hand brushed something small and hard. She pulled it free, brushing away the soil. A silver hairpin, delicate and expensive, engraved with tiny roses along its length. Too elegant for a child. Too deliberate to be accidental. She tucked it into her pocket and kept searching. Near the edge of the flower bed, partially hidden beneath a layer of mulch, she found shoe prints. Small, pointed, the kind left by designer heels. And then, just beyond the roses, tucked beneath a decorative stone, she saw it. A syringe. Her blood ran cold. She picked it up carefully, holding it to the light. The needle was capped, but traces of clear liquid clung to the inside. This wasn't medical waste. This wasn't an accident. This was evidence of something calculated, something dark. Lila wrapped the syringe in a tissue and slipped it into her bag. Her hands shook as she stood, scanning the garden one last time. Whoever buried Noah hadn't acted on impulse. They had planned it, prepared for it, and they had almost succeeded. She thought of Vanessa's perfect composure that morning, the way her tears appeared on cue, the way she had whispered just loud enough for everyone to hear. Women like her know how to beg. It's what they do best. Lila felt rage flare hot in her chest. This woman had tried to kill a child, and when that failed, she had destroyed the one person who saved him. But why? What did Vanessa have to gain from Noah's death? Lila didn't have the answers yet, but she knew where to start looking. Over the next few days, Lila became a ghost. She watched the King estate from a distance, noting who came and went. She followed Vanessa's sleek black car through the city, keeping far enough back to avoid detection. She sat in coffee shops and libraries, digging through public records and old news articles, searching for anything that might reveal who Vanessa Price really was. And slowly, piece by piece, the mask began to crack. Vanessa Price wasn't her real name. 5 years ago, she had lived in Detroit under the name Vanessa Moreno, engaged to a wealthy developer who died suddenly under suspicious circumstances. The case had been closed as an accidental overdose, but the man's family had contested the will, claiming Vanessa had manipulated him. The lawsuit was settled quietly, sealed records, no charges filed. Before that, there were whispers of other cities, other names, other men. Each time, Vanessa appeared like a dream, beautiful and charming and perfect. And each time, she left behind a trail of broken families and unanswered questions. Lila sat in the dim corner of a library, staring at a grainy photograph from a Detroit charity gala. Vanessa smiled beside her former fiancé, diamonds glittering at her throat, her hand resting possessively on his arm. The man looked happy, oblivious. 3 months later, he was dead. Lila's stomach twisted. This woman was a predator. She didn't just lie, she consumed. And now she had set her sights on Adrian King and his fortune. But Noah stood in the way, a reminder of Adrian's late wife, a living connection to a past Vanessa couldn't control. So she had tried to erase him. Lila pulled out her phone and took pictures of every article, every record, every scrap of evidence she could find. Then she kept digging. A week after Noah's near death, Lila discovered something that made everything click into place. A storage unit rented under the name V. Moreno, paid through an account linked to one of Vanessa's old aliases. It was located on the outskirts of Chicago, in a facility that didn't ask questions as long as the rent was paid. Lila drove there at dusk, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. The unit was on the second floor, tucked in a corner away from the main hallway. She picked the lock with a hairpin and a prayer, slipping inside before anyone could see. The space was small and cold, lit only by the fading light through a high window. Boxes lined the walls, labeled in neat handwriting. Financial documents, contracts, photographs. Lila opened the first box and felt her breath catch. Inside were files on Adrian King. Everything about him. His business dealings, his assets, his late wife's death certificate, his custody arrangements for Noah. It was a blueprint for infiltration. The next box held something even more chilling. Vials of clear liquid, identical to the syringe she had found in the garden. A burner phone with deleted messages that could still be recovered. And a journal, leather-bound and filled with Vanessa's handwriting. Lila flipped through the pages, her hands trembling. The entries detailed everything. How Vanessa had researched Adrian for months before orchestrating their first meeting at a charity auction. How she had studied his grief over his late wife, learning exactly how to position herself as the perfect replacement. How she had slowly isolated him, planting doubts about his staff, his friends, anyone who might see through her. And then, in the final entries, the plan for Noah. He clings to the past. He'll never let me in as long as the boy reminds him of her. I need him gone. Not dead, just gone enough. An accident. Something tragic that brings Adrian and me closer. Something that makes him need me. Lila's vision blurred with tears. This woman had buried a child alive as part of a calculated scheme to secure her place in Adrian's life. And when Lila had saved Noah, Vanessa had simply pivoted, turning Lila into the villain instead. She took pictures of everything. The journal, the vials, the files. Then she carefully packed it all into her bag and left the storage unit exactly as she had found it. She had what she needed now. The truth, cold and undeniable. That night, Lila called Adrian. He didn't answer. She tried again the next morning and the morning after that. Finally, on the third day, he picked up. His voice was cold, distant. I told you to stay away from my family. Lila took a deep breath. Mr. King, I need 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes to show you something. If you still think I'm guilty after that, I'll never contact you again. Silence stretched between them. Then, quietly, he said, tomorrow. My office. 10 a.m. If you're late, I'm calling the police. Lila arrived 15 minutes early. She wore the same clothes she'd worn the day she was fired, a quiet defiance. Adrian sat behind his massive oak desk, his face drawn and exhausted. Noah's near death had aged him. Vanessa sat beside him, perfectly composed in a cream blouse and tailored pants, her expression cool and unreadable. Lila didn't waste time. She set the journal on the desk, then the photographs, then the vials. Adrian stared at them, his brow furrowing. What is this? Vanessa's eyes flickered to the journal, and for just a moment, her mask slipped. Lila saw fear. This, Lila said quietly, is proof that Vanessa tried to kill your son. The room went deathly still. Adrian picked up the journal, flipping through the pages. His hands began to shake. Vanessa stood abruptly, her voice sharp. This is insane. She's fabricated all of this. She's obsessed, Adrian. I warned you. But Adrian kept reading. His face drained of color. He looked up at Vanessa, and Lila saw the exact moment his world shattered. You wrote this, he whispered. These are your words. Vanessa's composure cracked. I don't know what she's talking about. She broke into my things, planted evidence. Can't you see? She's trying to destroy us. Adrian stood, his voice low and trembling with fury. Is that why you told Noah not to scream? Vanessa froze. Adrian took a step toward her. He said those words to Lila. She told me not to scream. A 5-year-old doesn't say that unless someone threatened him. Vanessa's face twisted. You don't understand. He was in the way. He still is. Your precious little reminder of her. I gave you everything, Adrian. I made you whole again. And you still looked at him like he mattered more than me. The confession spilled out before she could stop it. Adrian staggered backward, horror etched into every line of his face. Lila stood silently, letting the truth settle. Vanessa realized too late what she had done. She lunged for the journal, but Adrian grabbed her wrist. Security, he said into his phone, his voice shaking. Now. Within minutes, the police arrived. Vanessa fought as they led her away, screaming about betrayal, about how she had saved Adrian from his grief, about how no one understood what she had sacrificed. The doors closed behind her, and silence filled the room once more. Adrian sank into his chair, his head in his hands. Lila stood by the window, watching the police car disappear down the long driveway. After a long moment, Adrian spoke. I'm sorry. His voice was barely a whisper. I'm so sorry, Lila. I should have listened. I should have known. Lila turned to face him. You were scared for your son. I don't blame you for that. He looked up, tears streaming down his face. I blamed you for saving him. She nodded slowly. People believe what they want to believe. Especially when the lie is prettier than the truth. Adrian wiped his eyes. How can I ever make this right? Lila thought for a moment. Then she said, you start by protecting him. Really protecting him. Not from the world, but from people like her. People who smile while they sharpen knives. He nodded. And you? What do you need? She smiled faintly. My job back would be a start. And maybe an apology to my daughter for all the nights I cried myself to sleep. Adrian stood, extending his hand. You have both. And more. Whatever you need, Lila. I owe you everything. In the days that followed, the story spread through Chicago like wildfire. Vanessa Price, the beloved socialite, was arrested and charged with attempted murder, fraud, and a litany of other crimes stretching back years. Her past identities unraveled in the press, each revelation more damning than the last. The families of her previous victims came forward, seeking justice that had been denied them for so long. Adrian held a press conference, publicly apologizing to Lila and praising her courage. He established a foundation in her name, dedicated to protecting domestic workers and ensuring they had legal support when accused unjustly. But for Lila, the greatest victory came quietly one afternoon when Noah ran to her in the garden, his arms wrapping around her waist. "Miss Lila," he whispered, "Daddy says you're staying." She knelt down, meeting his eyes. "I'm staying, sweetheart. I'm not going anywhere." He smiled, the first real smile she'd seen since that terrible morning. "Good. Because you're my favorite." She hugged him tight, feeling the weight of everything they'd survived. The garden bloomed around them, roses swaying gently in the breeze. And for the first time in weeks, Lila felt something she thought she'd lost forever: peace. Months passed. Vanessa was sentenced to 20 years in prison. The trial had been swift, the evidence overwhelming. Lila testified, her voice steady and strong, telling the truth the world had tried to bury. When it was over, she walked out of the courtroom with her head high, her daughter's hand in hers. Adrian offered her a position as head of household staff, with a salary that made her weep. But more than that, he offered her something priceless: respect, trust, a seat at the table. The King estate transformed under her care. The tension that had clung to its walls for so long dissolved, replaced by warmth and laughter. Noah thrived, his nightmares fading as he realized he was truly safe. And Lila, the woman who had once been cast aside as disposable, became the heart of a home that had nearly destroyed itself. One evening, as the sun set over the Chicago skyline, Lila stood in the rose garden where it had all begun. She knelt where she had found Noah, pressing her palm to the earth. It was soft now, rich with life. She whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude, not for the pain, but for the strength it had revealed. Because sometimes the truth doesn't come easy. Sometimes it claws its way out of the dirt, gasping and desperate, begging for someone brave enough to listen. And sometimes, just sometimes, that someone is exactly who the world underestimated. If this story moved you, if Lila's fight for truth resonated with something deep inside, we'd love to hear from you. Hit that like button, share this story with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe so you never miss another tale of courage and justice. Drop your thoughts in the comments about how this story made you feel and what you think about how it all ended. We read every single one. And let us know where you're watching from, because these stories connect us all, no matter where we are. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Until next time, keep fighting for the truth.